Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:15, so I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School Health Advisory Council to order. This meeting is in compliance with Section 28.004 of the Texas Education Code, an applicable board policy. The council's meeting today will address only the topics on the agenda. No other topics will be discussed during the meeting. SHAC meetings are open to the public. Guests wishing to address the SHAC may do so by emailing the SHAC committee at shac@neisd.net. That's SHAC@neisd.net. Any person that causes disruption during the meeting will be asked to leave. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. And with that said, the first matter on today's agenda is the approval of the minutes. A motion is made to approve the minutes. The first is Debbie Freno. Do we have a second? And it's Lori Fitch. Thank you for that. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Raise your hand. The motion is approved. Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing we wanted to make a motion to do is a recommendation that our March subcommittee meeting actually be moved to a full SHAC meeting. We are expecting Alex Vardahl to share the information from the SHI, our School Health Index, and that information is necessary before our subcommittees can go back and actually adjust any goals and make new goals moving forward. So without that information, our subcommittee meeting is probably going to be a bit ineffective. So would like to make a motion that we make sure that our March 22nd meeting is actually a full SHAC. Got Debbie Freno giving me a first, and I'm sorry, Lori Fitch has a second, so thank you. And we will send out reminders about that meeting change for you after this meeting. Do you want to go back to you, or do you want me to introduce? Okay, so we're going to jump into it. We obviously have a lot to talk about today. So we want to get into sharing with you all the information that we have gathered from our teachers regarding the PE and health and their recommendations. So just as a reminder, we are facilitators today. We are giving you this information so that you can make an informed recommendation. And then we will eventually present your recommendation along with the teacher's recommendation to the school board. The school board makes the ultimate decision on which instructional materials the district will move forward purchasing. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie Steinhoff, our instructional specialist for health K through 12. And I do just have to give a shout out to Katie and Brandon. I'm actually still officially not the director. The Monday after spring break, I start this job. So these two have been really doing a ton of work. So I just can't thank them enough for putting together the booklet that you see, the packets, all of this, with me coming in every now and then and telling them to fix something or edit this. So they've been super patient with me, and I appreciate that. So Katie's going to walk you through just a review of the process and how we've gotten to where we are today and what our steps are today. And then I will take you through the results. And then Sean will lead the voting, and we will vote for each grade level as we go. So we'll kind of do it that way. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie. Thank you for the reminder. If you've not done so, please sign in using the QR code. That includes all SHAC members and guests. Please use that QR code that's on the agenda to sign in. And there is a space if you're a guest to mark guest, or if you're a SHAC member, any of those. So please just make sure that you have signed in today. If you run into any technical difficulties, we'll get a paper sign-in for everybody. So with that, Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think this is the only mic that seems to be working.
This one works. Hi. Thank you all so much for being here and coming to have lunch with us and sitting and going through this review. I know we started this way back in October with lots of information then, so it felt right to just come back in February with lots of information again. So like Jennifer was saying, we are going to go through a couple of pieces, give you what did we do as these final processes came down or came as we went through them. We are going to talk about the materials that we were eligible for adoption and which ones we chose for our district, and then we'll switch out with the voting outcomes and teacher recommendations, and Jennifer will come up and speak about those specifically. So in your blue booklets, one of the best things about, I'm biased because I made the booklet, but one of the things about the blue booklet is that it will follow along. So if you actually kind of follow with us through the booklet, you will actually follow our presentation here so that you have the information firsthand. Very first thing in there is our timeline. You guys saw this timeline way back in October when we actually first met and were planning things out. The dates got a little bit more specific. Since the last time we met as a subcommittee, we did have all the rubrics go out to teachers. The instructional materials were delivered on campus. Basically, up until now, February 1st was when we had all of our teachers turn in their rubrics. This was the teacher going through, looking at the different instructional materials, answering the rubrics based off how they felt the instructional materials viewed. The dates, we have some red dates up there. We had inclement weather right in the middle of all of this ending, so we had to push some things back, but it worked out. All of our teachers did get those reviews done, that February 1st deadline. February 2nd through 4th was our voting window, was our proclamation voting window. So if a teacher filled out the evaluation rubrics, they were able to receive an actual vote to say, I choose, or this is the reason I'm choosing this particular material. And then here we are, February 22nd, presenting our voting results to you, and then we hope to go forward with our board meeting at the first possible opportunity. The materials that we had eligible for adoption for our high school PE class. So we did have materials eligible for the high school PE class, this is all PE. Let me speak again. All PE was we did have the high school course from Goodhart Wilcox publisher, the Lifetime Fitness and Wellness Pursuits. They were the only publisher that presented for a high school PE class. And then for our elementary K through 5, Quaver Ed or Quaver Health was the only option that met 100% of the TEKS, which was our standard for Northeast. For health, I know this is just a little bit smaller, but for health, there were multiple publishers on this list. The multiple publishers you can see either met 100% of the TEKS or did not. Those publishers that did not meet our criteria at all, therefore we did not give them a look. They did not have the opportunity to be eligible for adoption by us because they did not meet our TEKS, or they did not meet 100% of our TEKS. And we we decided to pull Goodhart Wilcox and Quaver Ed for the possible adoption materials from the TEA. These are specifically adopted or eligible from TEA. So like I had kind of referenced before, teachers were required to fill out a rubric before they could actually vote for their recommendation. This was to ensure that the teachers who are in the classroom teaching the materials they took the time to look through materials page by page, look at lessons, and actually evaluate it based on criteria that as a SHAC and other lead committee members, we decided would be within that rubric. SHAC members who did come to evaluate or did come to the sports park to see materials, you had the option to review or use a rubric, but you didn't have to. You didn't have to actually fill out a rubric to be here today or to give your recommendation. But we did have them available to kind of help with the whole process of what are you looking for, what are the things that our teachers are looking for. And the SHAC did have the option to see the rubrics, but not necessarily had to fill one out. The rubrics were scored 0, 1, 2, or NA, for those of you that may not have been familiar with the rubrics. A 0, like it says, the criteria was not met at all within the standard that the rubric question was asking. 1, it was partially. 2, it was completely. And NA was either it didn't fit for that specific material, maybe it wasn't the right level, the grade level, or there was just something not actually seen within or with that instructional material. We did encourage feedback. We got a lot of feedback on every question, but it was not required for every rubric question. Feedback was required for the voting recommendation. I'm voting for this option, or I'm recommending this option, and this is why. right, and at this point, I will turn it over to Jennifer, and she will take you through each content area that had the instructional materials. Oh, perfect, for questions. We have questions. I guess I don't have to click anything.
All right, so as we go through, we're going to go through these one at a time, and then we'll also give you a moment to look through the publisher's open house questions that came up after our publisher's open house. So we'll give you a moment, and we'll point out the ones that go with that particular grade level. So we're going to go ahead and start with high school PE. And as Katie already mentioned, we only had one publisher that submitted any materials for review, and that was Goodhart Wilcox, and it was only for one of our high school courses. So when we look at our voting results, or our campus representation, one thing that we did notice when we only had one instructional material, our participation was a little bit lower, because there's only one to vote for. Katie did a great job of continually reaching out and saying, hey, submit your vote. But when there was only one, sometimes it was a little bit lower. But we do want to point out is that we did have Churchill, MacArthur, and Reagan respond to our high school PE materials. And so you can see who responded. And then the vote out of those responding was 100% would like the Goodhart Wilcox, as opposed to none. That was their option. They could vote, yes, I want Goodhart Wilcox, but since there wasn't another one, we gave them the option to say none. And so of ours who voted, it was 100%. These were the comments, as Katie mentioned. When it was time to vote, they were required to submit comments on why they made that recommendation. And so part of it was the online resources, the flow of the textbook, and we felt the material offered was well presented and appropriate for the high school age student and user-friendly for PE teachers. I will say one thing that we've also included in your packets are the TEKS. If you're not as familiar with the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, that's actually the curriculum that we are bound to teach as educators, that is approved by TEA. The TEKS for this particular PE course are a little more academic in nature, and so a textbook for this course would be very helpful for the teachers. It is a bit more like our former Healthy Lifestyles course, where it kind of mixes a lot of health TEKS in there with the PE. So we did include all of the TEKS for you, both health and PE, in your packets in case you wanted to reference those. They're in the manila folder, not in the booklet itself. There's one packet for PE and one packet for health so that you can see that. We are in the process of streamlining those for our teachers and trying to do K-12 alignments. We're obviously not finished with that at this point, but we are working diligently on getting those done. So you might see them in a little bit different format as we continue to work on them. So that was our vote breakdown. So that kind of tells you what the teachers said. We also had our publisher's open house that was publicized on our PE and health website. It was open to the public. The only thing that we had asked was that people who came had previewed the materials so that we could make sure that everyone was familiar with them prior to. Our publishers only had 20 minutes to present. We did offer Q&A sessions that were live with the publisher at the end, but then we also created a Google form that allowed the public to continue to ask questions, and we sent those questions to the publishers themselves so that they could do responses. It's very similar to what TEA does, where they open up to public comments and the publishers respond. So the only question that we got from that was for secondary PE, and this is in your publisher's open house Q&A section. I know it's a little bit hard to read, but it's question number 15. And really, this was for McGraw-Hill. McGraw-Hill did not submit a textbook for us to review, yet they showed some PE resources. And so this question was, but you don't have a PE book, so what resources, is this going to come with our health if we go with you? And so you can see the response that they provided there. We also want to mention, before we are to ask you all to make your recommendations, we do want to point out that there in the manila folder is a packet. It should be on yellow paper. It could be a different shade of yellow because we ran out. a packet of emails that we received starting this weekend and through today. And so I sent these out in an email last night, and I've heard this morning that some people didn't get that email. So I'm glad that we had already pre-planned to go ahead and give you a print version of them anyway today. I printed out the ones that I received as of 10 a.m. today. If I got any after 10 a.m., they are not in here yet, but I can send them to you at any point. So I've printed out everything that's in there. There's also an additional one that's on green paper. That's because that wound up in my spam, and I didn't find it until after I had already printed the whole packet on yellow paper. So I found it in spam as those were coming off the printer, and so I just put them on green to make sure that you got the whole stack. So we would ask that you take maybe 3 to 5 minutes right now. If you would like to look over, if you have questions about the high school materials, and then I can answer those. I may look to Brandon and Katie as well, because they've been a part of this process quite a bit longer than I have, and they are a little more well-versed in some of this, but between the three of us, we can address your questions that you might have about the high school materials from Goodhart Wilcox for this one high school course. And again, if you take a look at the emails, question number 15 was the only one really in the publisher's Q&A that referenced the high school PE. And then once I think we're ready, 3 to 5 minutes, I think Sean's going to check in and see if we're ready to vote. Yeah? Okay, so we're going to give you a few minutes to just kind of review the emails, take a look at that. Again, we're just focused on high school PE right now, and if any questions come up, Katie has a microphone. She's going to run around so that your question can be recorded. Sean, if anyone has questions, I'll run it to them. If I could, if you could hold up a 1, a 2, or a fist on how many more minutes you need to feel comfortable with providing a recommendation simply for the high school PE materials. Fist is 0, a 1, or a 2 on how many more minutes you need. 1, 1, 1. Okay, we're going to go about 1 more minute. All right, that brings us to 1 more minute. Sean, I'll just kind of turn it over to you. What's currently on the screen, just so that you know, my staff and I have voted, but we have abstained from the vote because of the position that we have in the SHAC. We are voting members, but we feel like because of our position as the leads of the department, it was maybe not appropriate for us to vote. Because this is really about what you all want to recommend. And so what you see up there are the results from our 3 votes where we abstained. After you vote, Sean will kind of take you through that. Katie will update this slide with the results based on our live vote.
Yeah, so if you guys have got your packet, the proclamation, the bound copy, go to the second yellow page. And what you'll see at that page says Voting Outcomes High School Physical Education. Go to the last page of that section. And what you'll see is a QR code. And so what you'll do is take a picture, pull out your camera app, put it on that QR code, and then that will take you to the link where you can place
We have
your
one question.
recommendation. Okay.
Thank you. I was looking at the teacher feedback on the rubric, and I just was curious on. There was one that said materials include resource for differentiated skill development, modifications for all students, SPED, physical limitations, varying skill levels, and it's the next to last page. The third one down. Mm-hmm. And I just saw like 18% said 0, but then, 72% said 2. But I was just curious if there was any further feedback from the ones who felt like it was a 0, what they were looking for that maybe they didn't find in the textbook.
Katie's going to pull up. Katie will pull up those results. That's why we have her over here on a second computer over here, so we can go back and look at that and see what kind of comments they added to that part. There were times that some people chose to put a 0 if that didn't really fit their role, possibly didn't understand, rather than an NA. We found that some of them were putting a 0, but I will wait and let her pull that up. That's a very teachery question, understanding the differentiation and all of those. And so that could be part of why it was a 0 as opposed to an NA. But Katie's going to pull that up and share some of those responses. Are there any other questions while she is pulling that up? Yes.
Yes, so I understand that the SHAC is representing the community values, and so I know that these are the teacher votes, but I was looking through the stacks of parent emails, and I counted 16 parents adamantly against Goodhart Wilcox. So my question is there another option is this something that we can further explore to find other options that might be more suitable for the community?
There are no other options. So these materials are, it's this, or we don't have any materials for them. And in those emails, I'm not sure that they were all, I think many of them were on the health, not the high school PE. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'd have to go back and look at those again. But thank you for, yes, definitely pointing that out. But this was the only publisher that provided anything for high school PE.
It's just funny when you bring it up by responses. I scrolled the wrong one. Sorry.
Other questions? Yes.
Is it common for the district to use different publishers for the health high school curriculum and the PE curriculum?
Katie, do you want to speak to that currently?
Yes, we have different publishers for different levels in the PE and health department. Yes. I do have the responses to that question. So there were 2 responses to the question of differentiated skill development modifications for all students. The 2 responses were they did not see modifications in the material that they could review, and the other response was that they did not see any. So those teachers would say that maybe they were looking for something in particular, but I can't speak to that, but that was their comment.
I actually should have, I apologize, gone to that question that we have up here. We were prepared for that, and then I just completely forgot that we put them in there. So this was the question that you were asking about, yes? Okay. Any other questions? I don't know if that helped you, but that's the only 2 comments and responses that we got. Katie and Brandon, when you guys reviewed that part, did you notice anything on the materials for skill development modifications for SPED? On Goodhart Wilcox for the high school textbook? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Sean, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, but it has to be on recorded, right? Because I can talk loud enough, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, but it won't be on the recording. So again, that second yellow sheet, that's the high school physical education. Go to the last page, you'll see the QR code, and pull out your handy-dandy camera on your smartphone, and then you can scan over that. If I move my finger, you can scan over that QR code. Yes, it takes you to the link, and then you can place your vote. And I believe it's an opportunity for you to see. So it's abstain, approve, or.
You may vote for Goodhart Wilcox. You may vote to recommend Goodhart Wilcox. Again, this is your recommendation to the board. This is not the final decision. The school board will make the final decision. We will present what the teachers have recommended. We will present what SHAC has recommended, and then the school board will make the ultimate decision. So you may either recommend that we go with Goodhart Wilcox for high school PE. You may recommend we don't go with anything at all, or you may abstain from voting. Those are your 3 options. If you feel like you don't have enough information to vote, you're welcome to abstain. Please don't tell me there's a technology problem.
I scanned it and can't get to it. Okay, good. It's not just me.
We do have paper ballots if necessary.
This connection is not private. Oh.
But you shouldn't.
Okay. Don't be on the Wi-Fi.
It's the Northeast Wi-Fi that's causing it. We have paper ballots, though. So if anybody's having trouble, we can hand you a paper ballot.
I feel
That's
too,
technology.
sister.
That's how we all feel. Did it work?
I think I left them over.
That's probably why. If you're not connected to Wi-Fi, you probably have a better. Does anyone want a paper ballot instead? And this is actually going to have all of them on there. So we will ask that you put your name on there just because we asked for your name on the other as well. We aren't sharing any of that information, but anybody else? Oh, sorry.
Round two.
How many paper ballots did you know?
1, 2, 3 to 4. Yeah, so.
Is anybody still needing to vote? Okay. Waiting on one. All right, so everybody's voted, correct? All right, that completes the high school one, so round two.
Round 2. Katie's going to work on updating that PowerPoint for us. Forget I can't talk without this. I apologize. Katie's going to update that PowerPoint for us so we can see the electronic votes. I know we're going to definitely add in our paper votes as well, but just so we can see where we are with this. Out of 20 responses, it appears that 70% are voting for Goodhart Wilcox for high school PE. And again, we're going to add in our paper votes, so these numbers are going to change before we make them public. We will share this information, obviously, in our minutes, and we will share this with you at the end when we get all of our paper ballots in as well. I apologize for the problems with technology, but we will definitely get all of this to you. Questions? Are we ready to move to the next one?
I'm going to just put you on that one so you don't have to go through all the reverse slides.
Okay, so
All paper ballots vote? Everybody that had a paper ballot? Yes. Okay.
No, hold on to it because it'll have all of them on there. Oh, she's readjusting me. So we are going to move to high school health. So as you move through your booklet, the next yellow tab is our high school health information. And we have several questions that came from the publisher's open house regarding our health curriculum with the answers from the publishers. So we want to point those out to you. And as many of you have already looked at, the emails also reference our health curriculum. So we're going to guide you back to those emails. I don't have those specifically referenced which email went with which one, just because they were still coming in this morning. But we will give you each question that is referencing this so that you can see our campus participation for high school health was 100%. We had voting from every high school campus. Again, this was the trend that we saw. If there was a choice, we typically had 100% participation. When there wasn't really a choice, I think teachers felt it's obvious, right? And then here's how the vote turned out for high school health. Of our 18 people who voted, 55.6% voted for Goodhart Wilcox and 44.4% voted for McGraw-Hill. Those were the teacher recommendations. Here are some of the comments to both. I believe these are in the packet as well so that you can see. Remember, Katie has mentioned that when you voted for either publisher, you were asked to give why, a justification of why you went with that publisher. So these were the comments that came through. So you have those in your packet as well. So this was the teachers' responses to why they felt like these were the better resources for them.
I know it's very small on the screen. Wouldn't have it in the packet. So if you want to say these are just a few, and some of them were like pieces of it, but they have every full response in there.
So what we have on here is just abbreviated versions of these. You have all of the full comments in your packet that you also can look at. Questions that came from the publisher's open house, so that if you want to star these to take a look at them. And some of these you're going to repeat because they were for secondary health, so that would include middle school and high school, but some were specifically called out for high school, so we want to point those out. So in your publisher's open house, questions number 1 and 2, 4, 6, and 7. There's going to be more, so I don't know if you want to star those. 1 and 2, 4, 6, and 7, 8 and 9, 10 and 11, yes, it's the publisher's open house Q&A. Question 12, 13, 14, 16, and you can see it says secondary health. I'm just trying to make it easy to star them. 17, 18, 19. Question 20. And then we would also ask you to refer to the emails that are in your packet that reference the high school health materials. So those are to give you full transparency. You've seen the teacher comments. You have seen the questions that have come through from our public open house and the publisher responses to those, things they can and can't possibly take out. And then you have the emails. So I'm going to go ahead and set a timer for about 5 minutes because
I do also want to point out in your blue books with those publishers Q&A, if the question referenced a page number particularly, we did get permission to actually copy so that you could see that page from the publisher, because we did not have enough books to give everybody a book. But if they referenced page 22, we copied page 22 so that you could see exactly what that parent, or what the question, was referencing. So I do want to, while you're reviewing all of that, you can actually have some access to some of the materials. If a question was, or a reference was in an email, we did not get those with enough time to put those into these booklets. So if there's something specifically referenced from a page in an email that you're not seeing, we did not have time to put that in the packet.
Also, Katie numbered them to correspond to the question. So like the one I'm holding up has a number 6 on it. That is the reference from the textbook that goes with question number 6. So she coded that so you could easily reference back to what particular part of the material might have been in question. So I'm going to start with 5 minutes. I know there's a little bit more material to look at, but I know the emails many of you have already looked at in the other one. So we'll start with 5 minutes for you to look at it, review, come up with your own questions, and then we'll open it up for conversation. We are approaching the 5-minute mark. If you could hold up a number between 0 and 3 on how many more minutes you need before we open up to questions. I'm seeing 2, 2, 2, 2. I'm seeing a lot of 2s. Okay, we're going to go 2 more minutes. Okay, we're coming to the end of our additional 2 minutes. I do want to just reiterate something that Katie had said earlier, and that is that as SHAC members, most of you have already reviewed all of these materials. You came in, you did that. You also were part of submitting those rubrics. So when I know I mentioned this is what the teacher said, I erroneously did not include SHAC also. They were allowed to submit a rubric, they just weren't required to. So their voice as SHAC members were also included in part of those instructional rubrics. They just were not voting until today. So today was their chance to actually vote for their recommendation moving forward. So I also want to make sure we're not rushing anybody. So we want to open it up to questions, and I'm going to run the microphone around. If you have anything for me, Katie or Brandon, that we could try to answer that you have regarding these materials before we put this to a recommendation. Yes, ma'am.
In the teacher voting recommendations on the McGraw-Hill side in our packet, 2 different comments regarding Spanish materials being available. Do we currently provide Spanish materials for our health course, and is that an important feature for our diverse population?
I'm going to answer half of that and let Katie answer the other half. That is a very important feature for our diverse population, and it is something that many teachers have discussed. So having those materials available in Spanish for our students in health would be important. Katie, can you speak to currently with the health materials?
We do currently have Spanish materials for them. We either use the district translator or honestly, a lot of times in the classroom, because our sources are limited, we have encouraged the students who know about the Google Translate app, and they kind of hover with their phones and their pictures. So both resources have Spanish options available. I know the references were for McGraw, but we do currently use them. Yes.
Correct. Both
Yes,
provide
said,
options in
okay.
Spanish.
Thank you. Yeah.
They both have it. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to get on the record that looking through the parent emails, it looks like there was a concern about the Goodhart-Wilcox potentially undermining parent-child relationships, where our TEKS expressly state that students should seek guidance from their parents first, but these materials in the Goodhart-Wilcox repeatedly reference trusted adults, which could be anyone. Also, in terms of privacy, parental rights and families' right to privacy could come into question because The Good Heart Wilcox materials have numerous questions and quizzes for students to complete regarding mental illness, sexual behaviors, and critical appraisals of family members, which could lead to privacy issues.
So one of the health teaks is regarding self-assessment, and in Northeast, even currently in our health classes, we do offer self-assessment, like health assessments. We do not have questions that pertain to anything that would be self-incriminating or anything that is outside a permission-based unit. So we do not ask about drug use, tobacco use, sexual, anything that has to do with HSAE. We don't ask any of those things. We're asking them, do you wear a seatbelt in a car? Do you brush your teeth twice a day? We're asking them questions, just learning how to take basic health behaviors and how are you assessing your health related to different health literacies. We did see those in there. I think one is even copied inside your book on one of the pages because one was referenced specifically. But again, an instructional resource is not something that we are bound to use. If it does not fit what we would use in Northeast, we would continue to use something that aligns with our values specifically.
So to kind of touch base on what Katie just said, the TEKS are the most important thing that we teach in Northeast ISD. These are instructional resources that we will use to help our teachers accomplish those TEKS. And if there are parts of the instructional resource that don't align with our values, there will be specific instructions, and we will create those supplemental resources for our teachers that say you will use this instead of this activity to ensure that we are staying in alignment. Also, I believe your comment about concern about referencing to the parent, which is in the TEKS, Good Heart Wilcox did say that they would be doing a reprint. Would you explain that?
Yes, there was one, again, it's referenced in one of the questions that there was a part that does not specifically say the parent. Good Heart did reach out and say that it's referenced earlier in, and so they were using another opportunity to say another relative. But there is also in our book that is up there is every highlighted edit where they're doing reprints where it does say trusted adult, that parent is put first. And all of their edits are in both the middle school as well as the high school book. They do, and it is also on the TEA website. It is a page by page number included, paragraph included, every edit that they're making to reference that.
Also, Katie included the current statement that we have with our health materials about referencing to parents when you can't answer questions. Do you want to mention that?
Yes. One of the very last things for the publisher Q&A looks just like a paragraph. This is actually something that we use specifically in in training our teachers on our HSAE units. It's specifically speaking to if you come across a question that is outside the current curriculum, how do you handle that? And per board policies, we do have to make sure that we are very specific in how we answer those questions. You have that specific paragraph in there in that publisher's Q&A, and it actually raised a great idea for us to include this just in general in our PE and health guidelines. So it's not just specifically in one training, but it's continuously seen all around. It doesn't matter the content, but that is a training that that every single one of our health teachers has already gone through.
So we're going to definitely keep adding that to all of our units.
So personally, I only looked at the high school textbooks, and I read both of them, and I did not find either offensive personally. I did find that the Good Heart Wilcox was probably better adapted for people kids who have troubles paying attention. It's more colorful. It has the same section and color blocks on each one, whereas the McGraw-Hill one, although very good, I liked it too. It was like our textbooks from 30 years ago, and it was just kind of a little more ho-hum, and it was very easy to follow. It was very easy to read, but I really kind of felt like the students don't learn like we did 30 years ago. And so for me, the Good Heart Wilcox was a little better, but I still found that you're not going to go wrong either way.
Thank you. Over here.
So on one of the teacher rubric questions, it said material are 2022 Health 1 TEKS aligned. And on the McGraw-Hill, 16% of those responding gave it a 1. Yeah, so I was curious why they didn't feel like it was aligned.
So we know as the department when we picked them that they were. I will say that again, we were kind of floating on our own for just a little while there. And honestly, we did not have the opportunity to do a full TEKS training with the teachers. We kind of assumed that came second. Hindsight, that might have should have come first. So some teachers weren't necessarily looking at, some of them maybe were thinking, oh, I'm looking at the TEKS that we have now. And that honestly falls on us. It was just, like I said, we were floating for a little while, but we know that as everybody that was here to start, that we went through and made sure that they did meet 100%. Some of the teachers, especially with McGraw-Hill, because they did not go through TEA and don't have TEA's recommendation or TEA's approval, that wasn't just stated for them like it was with Goodhart-Willcox.
We will be providing a year at a glance or a semester at a glance for these courses that are based in the TEKS. And so that information, the answer to that question, made us put a note to self that during curriculum day, we are certainly doing a TEKS training for all of our health teachers to make sure that we are very well aware of our new TEKS, especially the ones about the legal expectations around HSAE, along with the preventing violence portions. So all of the permission slip based, because there are new requirements for that. So we will definitely be using that information to make sure. But both books are 100% TEKS aligned. So good question.
In the publisher's Q&A that's in our packet, there's several of the questions to Goodhart-Willcox mention that these materials are the only Texas SBOE, which is State Board of Education, adopted materials for the 2022 proclamation. Can you talk about that, the State Board of Education's role in approving or recommending instructional materials and that process?
Yes, I'm going to speak to this as best I can, and based on conversations that I've had with Jimmy Ramos. And I've been through a textbook adoption before with ELAR, so I can speak to that as well. So what Katie showed very early on were all of the ones that got submitted to TEA to look at. And so we looked at those, and we only pulled the ones that had 100% TEKS, right? So that's why those are the ones that we present. Then TEA gets together and they look at the one that they're going to approve. Well, what that approval really means, it's more of a financial decision. What you have, so now the only one that is approved is Goodhart-Willcox, and it is now on list. What that means is you, as a school district, if I'm going to purchase on list from TEA, they've already put what their prices are going to be, and we don't veer from that, and guaranteed that that's the price for the life of the adoption, right? So if we have to buy more. Buying off list means that we can negotiate with the publisher. We get gratis items like TEKS training, like training on how to use the online resources. We often get teacher editions thrown in for free. So on list and off list is more of a financial decision, and it's really built more for smaller districts that don't have this kind of support in trying to make these decisions. So Goodhart-Willcox is the only one that made it. I will say the reason McGraw-Hill is not on either of those lists is they did not submit their materials in time. So we work with McGraw-Hill often in our district. That's actually our high school ELAR adoption is McGraw-Hill. So we do work with them, and that is not uncommon that in Northeast we buy off list. Other questions? Y'all are asking great questions. Sean?
Yes, ma'am.
I think maybe I'm going to turn it over to you.
job to do, and if I can't do this, I'm useless. Okay, here we go. So go to the high school health one, find that yellow sheet, go to the last page on that, make sure you're off of neisd.net Wi-Fi, and then take a picture, and then go ahead and go in and cast your vote. And then for those of you that have your paper vote, you can vote. It's all of that is on the same sheet, so you can mark your answer there.
Note to self, smaller QR code next time. Yeah. Do leave it. Smaller QR code next time.
If anyone's technology has gone kaput since the first vote, let me know and we'll give you one of these.
Okay, I'm snipping. Can I just see a show of hands so I know to count, wait for numbers before I snip? Who has a paper ballot? Perfect, thank you. That's all I need. I just need to know how many papers to hear.
So we have had a request for a roll call vote. We are checking with our lawyers right now, and so we'll come back to that when we have an answer. Right now, all of the ballots that are being cast, you know that your name is on it, and you know that your email address is on it. So we do have that information on our end. So, but we have said in this that we would keep it private in this current setting right now. So we are checking with our lawyers to find out if that is, I want to protect everybody. Some people are comfortable with sharing their vote. Some people are not. So Mr. Jimenez has gone to meet with Rick Lopez to see what we need to do with that and to see where we stand with that. So we will look into that. So we're not going to share the results just yet. Is everybody okay with that? We can move on, hold off on sharing the results, and start talking about the next one. And then once he comes back to me with an answer, we will move forward with what that answer is. Okay?
Oh, we're going. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to set you up. Sorry. Let me set you up for the right one.
So our next in our packet is we're going to move to our middle school health, which is really just 6th grade. So you can take a look at that with us. And here is who voted, making their recommendation. So you can see we had a very small group not respond. All of those names right there in the middle are our campuses that responded. So we had several middle schools. And then Katie also broke that out to represent our high school clusters. So while we might not have had 100% of middle schools cast a vote, we did have 100% representation by cluster of every high school campus. So again, we were very happy with the turnout of people who cast their vote. And this is how the middle school, really 6th grade, because that's the only grade that we teach health, 72.2% went with Goodhart-Willcox as their recommendation, and 27.8% went with McGraw-Hill as their recommendation. So again, just as we have, many of the questions that you will see about this particular set of instructional materials are the same questions you already looked at for high school, because it fell under secondary. Some of those questions were specifically high school, and some of them were not. These are kind of an overview of the comments. Again, teachers were asked when they voted to provide comments on why they went with Goodhart-Willcox or why they went with McGraw-Hill. So we wanted to show you that. On the screen is not all of them, but in your packet you do have all of them. On that 2-column page, you have all of those. So we'd like to give you, as we have for all of the others, here are the questions that are in reference to the secondary health. And again, these are a repeat of many of the others, so you've probably already looked at them. If it referenced just high school, I took it out. So these are ones that maybe didn't say high school or middle school, they just fell under secondary health. So it's questions number 1, 2, 7, 13. I think I put 13 on there twice. 14, 15, or is that 8? That's 18. I can't see. 19, 20. And then again, we will point you to your packet of emails that are in your packet that reference the middle school instructional resources. So we'll give you, again, we'll start with 5 minutes. A lot of this is the same. So we'll start 5 minutes and see how much more time you need, and then we will go to open questions after that. There it is. I know we are getting very short on time. So before we open this to discussion, we're going to go back to what we talked about previously with the last vote that we made. There was a motion that we do the roll call vote. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean. He's going to look to see if there's a second, and then we'll move forward from there.
So there's a motion on the floor that for each of these votes on these curriculum choices, that it would be a roll call vote. My understanding that is each name gets called, each person casts their vote so that everybody knows what everybody's voted. So that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to do that? Okay, hearing no second, then that motion does not carry, so we'll continue moving forward. Thank y'all so much.
Okay, so we are going to open it up. Well, we have 5 minutes. Here's what we can do. We already made a motion to make our next SHAC meeting in March a full SHAC. We can come back and pick up with this. You would have this time between now and March 22nd to review this, as well as the other materials. We will ask that the blue booklet does not leave, but because we have publisher materials in there, and that would be a copyright violation. You are welcome to take the TEKs. You are welcome to take the emails. You're welcome to take all of that. But I'm going to make a motion that we hold off on voting for our middle school health until we come back in March. Do I have a second? I have a second from Debbie Freno. And of course, elementary school, and finish the rest. So we will finish the rest of this when we come back in March. Okay? With that, I'll turn it over to you all to adjourn.
The time is 1:29. We adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for coming.